Okay, so the American Revolution is won, and now it's time to create some brand spanking new state and federal governments here in these United States. And I don't know about you, but I am so down to talk about that. So, if you're ready to get them brain cows milked, let's get to it. Okay, now as a result of declaring independence in 1776, each state drafted and ratified a new constitution to create their state level government. And because during the Revolution there was no central government aside from the Continental Congress, which had very little power, state governments played a significant role in carrying on the fight for independence. Now, it's going to be important to understand some of the common features of these state constitutions because they're going to play a real big role in the creation of the Constitution later, but alas, I get ahead of myself. Oh, and by the way, if you want note guides to follow along with this video and all my videos, then get your clicky finger out and check the link in the description. Now, in general, Virginia's Constitution, which included a Bill of Rights, became a loose template for other state constitutions. And among the rights protected in Virginia's Constitution were the freedom of the press, free elections, the right to form militias, right to a speedy trial, etc. It was also common that state constitutions banned titles of nobility and other social symbols of aristocracy. And that's not surprising given the Enlightenment emphasis on the rejection of arbitrary hereditary power. Now, for the most part, state constitutions limited the franchise or, voting rights to white male property owners. And it's not hard to understand why the franchise was limited to white men, and if that is hard to understand, then I would direct you to my previous video, my dear pupil. But why property requirements? Like, what's that about? Well, let me compare it to the stock market. Like, if I purchase a stock or a share in a company, then I also have voting rights regarding what that company does. And that's real important because I'm invested in that company making money so that I too can make money with my shares. But if someone doesn't own shares in the company, then it doesn't matter how many opinions about the company pour forth from that person's mouth hole because they are not invested. And that's the idea of property requirements for voting. Those who owned land were considered to be those who had invested in society and therefore could be trusted to vote on the outcomes of society. I mean, I'm not saying I agree with it, I'm just trying to explain it to you, so, you smell what I'm stepping in? Good, because the third commonality in the various state constitutions that you're going to need to know is that with the exception of Vermont, state constitutions did almost nothing to eradicate slavery from their midst. However, to be fair, some states did adopt constitutional measures for the gradual emancipation of enslaved people, the chief example being Pennsylvania. Okay, fourth and finally, state constitutions create a government in which most of the power was concentrated in the legislature, which was the representative body of the people as opposed to an executive or, like a governor. Furthermore, almost all state representative bodies were bicameral, and that indicates that after so long enduring what they considered the tyranny of arbitrary executive power in the hands of stupid Great Britain, the new state constitutions wanted to decentralize power as much as possible. Okay, so state governments unlocked, but after the Revolution, the United States needed a new federal government as well. And so in 1777, the Continental Congress drafted the first Constitution of the United States, namely the Articles of Confederation. And yes, you heard me right, the Constitution of the United States that is in fact the second Constitution to govern this fair land. And the fact that there's now a different Constitution should tell you that the Articles was kind of a hot smoking turd. I mean, that sounds a little judgy, but just let me tell you about it. Now, the structure of the Articles of Confederation reflected the state's distaste for executive and centralized power. And even though the Articles created a federal government which united the states, it kept the federal government exceedingly weak. And that's not hard to understand because the folks who composed this document still had kind of a monarchy hangover from their colonial days, and so they created a central government that was about as threatening as a soft-boned toddler who likes warm hugs. Therefore, in the first years of the new republic, state governments had by far the most political power. Now, I'm as eager as you are to start talking about the weaknesses of the Articles and all the drama thereunto appertaining. But first, I need to tell you about what was arguably the best achievement of the federal government during this era, namely the passage of the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. Sounds really exciting, I know, but it was. You see, the purpose of this ordinance was to organize and regulate the vast and unsettled Western territory that had come to the United States as a result of the Treaty of Paris. And so, not only did the ordinance mandate that land be reserved for schools, but it also banned slavery in the territory. Additionally, it laid out the rules that dictated how territories in the Western region could become official states. And it worked marvelously. In fact, if you live in any of these states right here, well, then you could thank the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. Okay, now, while this limited federal power satisfied Americans who wanted to avoid centralized power at all costs, the Republic began facing significant problems that began to show the weaknesses of the Articles to effectively govern. For example, under the Articles, the federal government was composed of a single body, namely a legislature, which is to say there was no federal executive and there was no federal court system. Additionally, the federal government had no power to tax the states unless all 13 states agreed to be taxed, nor did it have the power to create a national currency or raise a national army. And beyond that, there were at least 5 seats on the constitutional struggle bus that kept revealing cracks in the Articles. The first seat on that bus was problems with international trade. You see, after the Revolutionary War, Great Britain cut off trade between the United States and the British West Indies. Rude. And then Spain went ahead and prohibited American trade ships from accessing the Mississippi River via Louisiana.
Guys, stop! up!
And pirates off the Barbary coast of North Africa attacked U.S. merchant ships. But the federal government, with its glaring lack of centralized power, not to mention a navy, was helpless to remedy these economic problems. Okay, the second seat on the bus was all about federal finances. Put simply, the new Congress could not pay its war debts. Do you remember a minute ago when I said the Articles gave the federal government no power to tax? Yeah, if Congress wanted tax revenue, they just kind of had to knock on each state's door and ask nicely, and you don't have to be a genius to figure out how that went. Hey guys, sorry to bother you, but can we have some money? You're so crazy. What the? This guy. So to remedy this problem, states proposed a resolution in 1782 which granted Congress the power to collect a 5% tax on imported goods. 11 states approved, but those rascally states, Rhode Island and Virginia, said no. And for that law to pass, a unanimous vote was required, another weakness of the Articles of Confederation, and since they didn't get it, Congress remained weak and broke. Okay, the third seat on the federal struggle bus had to do with interstate commerce, or, the way states trade with each other. Now, because the new nation was more like a collection of independent and powerful states, they each competed with one another for economic gain. To that end, states put tariffs on goods and hampered free trade in and around the new republic. And as you may have guessed by now, the federal government under the Articles had precisely no authority to settle disputes over interstate commerce and help facilitate the flourishing of a national economy. Okay, the fourth seat on the struggle bus was reserved for problems with foreign relations. You see, although Great Britain had lost the Revolutionary War, they kept forces occupying several forts along the western frontier. Dirty move. And here they traded guns and other valuable items to American Indian groups and then encouraged them to attack frontier settlers in order to frustrate their progress west. I'll just keep getting dirty. And can you guess who was basically powerless to address this?
George Washington.
What? No, it had to do with
Rosa Parks?
Stop it. No, it was in fact the federal government under the Articles of Confederation which had no power to stop this egregious violation of the terms of peace. And why? Because, as I mentioned earlier, Congress had no authority to raise an army. And now we come to the fifth seat on the federal struggle bus, and that one was reserved for internal unrest. And oh my goodness, if the other problems showed cracks in the Articles of Confederation, this is the one that blew its entire crap up. So let me tell you about Shays' Rebellion. Now, in the years following the Revolution, Congress had still not paid many of the men who had fought in the Revolution, and they were suffering profoundly. And so, finally fed up with this situation, a group of angry farmers in Massachusetts, led by the saucy Daniel Shays, attacked courthouses in the area and then stormed a federal arsenal. Long story short, the Massachusetts militia met the rebels and quickly suppressed the rebellion. Now, that may seem like a small deal by your reckoning, but it was a big slap in the face to those in power in the era of the Articles. You see, the chief effect of this rebellion was to put on full display the intolerable weakness of the Articles of Confederation because the federal government could do precisely squat about it. And furthermore, because there were unpaid veterans everywhere in the states, fears were stoked that this rebellion could be the start of many more to follow. And so when they considered that the federal government could do precisely nothing to remedy this problem, they could neither pay the veterans nor raise an army to defeat them, it became clear that a new constitution was sorely needed. And that, my dear pupils, where we'll pick up next time. Well, okay, you can click here to watch my other Unit 3 videos, or you can click here to grab my video note guides, which will help you get all the contents of this course firmly crammed into your brain folds. And I appreciate you stopping by, and I'll catch you on the flip-flop. Heimler out.